How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Ganji. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Guys, today we're going to discuss what the public doesn't know about what we do in correctional, in corrections, who we are, the type of role we play. I think it's a great way to kind of showcase the truth, kind of go against these false beliefs of who we are and what we do. So today we're going to discuss what we feel the public may not know. But I also think the other part of this conversation is to discuss also what we may have forgotten in ourselves and what we do. So part of this dialogue today is also an effort to bring value back to the work we do. So hopefully the public sees it, but more importantly, the people working in the profession see it. And I think it's going to be a great dialogue. We have 10 areas that we want to cover. It's alive, so we'll be also answering questions that come our way. But I do have Russ. Let me get Russ on. What's up, Russ?
Hey there, Anthony. How's it going, sir?
Good, brother. Yeah, you got it. You mind introducing yourself to our audience?
Yeah, my name is Russ Hamilton. I am a former and retired sergeant from California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. And I am also a former senior juvenile correctional officer. I am also currently, I work for a private company that does reentry and rehabilitation work, where I carry a caseload at a local county jail, and also at a probation department, a county probation department. And I am also the founder of Keepers of Chaos, which is designed to give support, training, mentorship, history, knowledge, and everything correctional back to the great men and women who work in this field, regardless of whether they are badged or not. I am also here on Tier Talk quite often, and I love doing this. And I think this is going to be a good conversation, because I think that, sometimes a lot of our people get a little bit disheartened. They forget about the value of what it is that they do. They forget, how much the public relies on them. And sometimes it can be a thankless, dirty, dangerous job. And so I extend, my thanks to everyone out there who has done it. And I just want them to know that I appreciate what they do. I know Anthony does, and there's a lot of people out there. And this is one way that we have of just expressing to the public the things that they don't know about corrections, the things that they don't understand, and the things that they never have to think about sleeping in their beds safely at night, because we are not.
Yeah, and guys, the reason why, as I said, the reason why I wanted to have this dialogue is to kind of bring back the value. I mean, that's all. So I do have people on the channel that do follow it that are from the outside. So it's good for them to kind of see what it is that we do, give them an understanding, because they do ask a lot of interesting questions. But again, also for ourselves. I think right now, times in corrections is very challenging. So we have to remain motivated or inspired, and that requires us to look inward. So we may have to shift that perspective, because the last thing I want us to do is to fall into some level of hopelessness and just accepting that, yeah, this is all we are, this is all we'll ever be. When at the end of the day, when I joined this profession, when Rush joined this profession, we joined it because we knew this profession was a lot more than what people think it may be. So I have 10 areas that I think are worth discussing, kind of give people a generalized idea of, who we are, what we do. And the first thing I wanted to hit up was the death of training. Russ, I started corrections over 20 years ago. So when I went to the academy, it was about a 4 or 5 month academy, somewhere in that range. We lived there. The amount of training that we received was not simple to just guarding people in a world that doesn't move. It was very advanced training. It was training on communication, training on dealing with people with mental illnesses, training on de-escalation, training on crisis management, training on emergency response, self-defense, training at the range. I mean, the list goes on. Obviously, I think people just think that when you work in corrections, you just kind of sit there and do nothing, and the world just kind of moves around you, and that's not the case. Technically, in corrections right now, guys, we are actively involved in that world. we are not just sitting guard while you got inmates moving back and forth to different programs and stuff like that. It's not the case. We are actively involved every day with interacting with the inmates, making sure they get from point A to point B, solving problems that come along the way, because obviously we lack a lot of resources. Right now, we are a bit understaffed. Right now, I wish we could say that the operations of a facility truly run minute by minute, but we also know that there's a lot of concern, so we have to make decisions on the fly. I also put in a couple other things here too, Russ. But Russ, I think people kind of have a primitive perspective of who we are. They like to call us guards, and the reason why, even though I accept the history to that, the reason why I tend to get upset with it is because it minimizes the training we get, which evolves when you're on the job, but also, you know, what we do in this world, which is a lot more than just standing by. What's your thoughts on that, Russ?
Yeah, you know, our professional ancestors went by that term, and that term was, you know, part of what they were hired as, and I'm cool with that. You know, I know that, you know, I stand on their shoulders, you know, having been put into a position where, you know, I got to evolve into something more. I'm very much irritated sometimes, though, by, you know, journalists who put that moniker on us when it's no longer part of anything that we are. There's no place in the United States that I know of where that term is still used. You know, we are correctional officers, we are correctional staff, correctional sergeants, correctional lieutenants, and we've earned that title. And so I see no reason that that specific title should not be used, especially by those people who allegedly know how to use words and to frame things and to shape things, when that is indeed the correct title that we have. So I think that you know, that's something that we should try and put out there. You know, we should all be ambassadors for this great job that we have. And I think that, you know, others that want to denigrate us, or, you know, just want to say, oh, well, that is just a prison guard. Well, you know what? If you haven't gone through the training, if you haven't put your life on the line for the public, if you haven't gone in there and, you know, taken some hits and, you know, been a part of a process where we completely lose everything to chaos, and then we have to take and put it back inside the bottle again, as it were, then you have no idea what it is that we do. And, you know, I just want to always be that person that's out there telling the public about what we do, how we do it, and why we're such an integral part, you know, of the criminal justice system. Without us, none of the system could function at all in any manner whatsoever. And so this is what we are. This is what we're here doing. And, you know, I think that what we do is not only important, but it's fascinating, and it takes a special breed to really be able to do this and to be good at it, and to take, you know, challenges and just, you know, every single day rise and meet them and adapt, overcome, and conquer every single day.
Yeah, and guys, the reason why it's important to have this dialogue, someone did mention, it's good coming up because you have the case of the Delphi case where the system's being attacked a little bit. And that's why I think it's important to have dialogues like this, because people that don't understand the system sometimes, unfortunately, think they do. And they push us towards primitive practices because they see us as knuckle draggers, when they don't realize that that's not where we're at. And I think, to be honest with you, it's good to have dialogues like this, because it shows people, one, the depth of training that we have, that we're not just simple guards, as I mentioned, but two, it allows for insight into the system from people who work the system. I think right now there was a lot of dialogue on Richard Allen's stay in solitary confinement, and they were basically using that as a way to minimize about 61 confessions that he had said while he was in solitary confinement. As you know, we hate that term. And basically, the people from the outside looking in were trying to explain their perspective, I'm sure connected to a political agenda, when at the end of the day, we don't do it that way. And the funny thing is the more people look back at us in that minimized way of what we do, then it fits into how they perceive the system was. So I think a lot of us kind of hate the fact that we're being minimized in what we do, because it's a way for people to look at what we do and say, yeah, but this is how the practices are. No, they're not. And to show you that they're not, if you look at where the staff are today compared to where they were 40, 50 years ago, corrections is not what people may think. It's a world that's forever moving in a very, it's tough, because I understand the directions it's going to. There still has to be a balanced direction between rehabilitation and safety and security. But it's going in a direction that I feel it needs to go to, but you got to balance out the safety and security aspect. But I wanted to also mention to people, I don't think people realize this either, but officers that work behind that wall, they are trained to understand the signs of mental health concerns. A lot of people think that, again, if someone's decompensating, we just allow them to decompensate. And that's not the case. I mean, officers work very well with the mental health professionals to make sure that we don't have individuals that are decompensating. So again, not to harp too much on the Richard Allen situation, but when people start to say that he's having this mental health breakdown and the solitary confinement and staff is doing this, it's like, no, that's an attack on the system, because everybody right now that works in the correctional setting, mental health, the officers, the staff, management, we all have training that's a lot more advanced than most people may think. And having said that, we are actively involved in making sure that we run a humane facility. I mean, sadly, the thing that usually stops us from running a humane facility are the inmates that are quick to circumvent the rules and regulations that we're putting into place to help run a humane facility. And I also think, even by doing this show, I think another good thing to mention is that this answers the why. So a lot of people may not understand the practices and are quick to judge the practices based on their primitive notion of what we do. Well, this goes to show you why it's being done, to give you guys a better understanding. So right off the bat, I think when we let people know the depth of training, that also lets people know how much the criminal justice system has evolved. I'm just tired of being attacked for practices that we haven't done for 30 or 40 years. Or if that does happen, sadly, we do have people that don't define us in the best way, but we don't generalize our whole profession based on the negative actions of just a few individuals. And I want to mention one more thing when it comes to the depth of training. Do you know that obviously in some states, my state law enforcement, we're law enforcement, and you'll see us, we were there for 9/11, helping with cleanup, helping manage chaos. We're there for political events in case there's uproars. A lot of our officers have transferred to federal positions, other law enforcement positions. I mean, think about that, guys. You working in a prison, what's the one thing you definitely learn is how to communicate. And then you bring that skill out into the real world. It's an amazing gift to have. But Russ, you think that's correct? Like, I mean, just the depth of training and how it plays out into other areas where maybe most people may see police at a better light, but do they realize that some of the police officers could have started their career in corrections?
There's two things to that. The first is the training itself. We do get a lot of different training, and it's so varied that, the number of classes that I've taken in my career, with just different names, is, in the hundreds. So the training is varied, but then the experience is varied as well. And the experience is also very condensed. There's no dilution that goes on with regards to the population that we manage. It's all very, condensed. It's been distilled, if you will, and there's very little in the way of normal human social norms installed within that. And so, we deal with a lot of, very socially negative um, people, and, criminal mindsets every single day. And this goes on from the time you get there until the time that you leave. And what that does, if you're smart about the way that you handle it, is it gives you a really broad background on how to handle a lot of different things. The number of different things, emergencies and riots and stabbings and shootings and everything that I've responded to in my career is in the thousands. And so that really does prepare a person to do all sorts of things. The main thing that I think that we engage in, though, is just the level of different types of communications. And we did a video on this. I think maybe it was yesterday or the day before. And just, these people that put themselves willingly into these types of jobs, are just simply the best at what they do.
I agree with that, Russ. I think that we get the same calling. I know a lot of people that join this profession could join it for the same reasons that some would join it. Some would join a police officer, or being a police on the streets, or being a Fed, or working in the fire department. There's a need to want to help. There's a need to want to give back, and in some cases, there's a need to continue the legacy. We got a lot of families that have traveled down in corrections, from grandfather to father to son. I mean, straight down, where they feel that there is important work. Because again, when you're dealing with people, the chance to create an impact is there. So you can't deny the fact that there is important work that happens behind the wall. But I do feel that some of us do have that same calling that you would find in other areas of first responders. And I think that actually matters today. It's a good point, Russ, because I think that we're in a very challenging profession, challenging times on top of that. So you need something, a core motivator to keep you moving forward, because if you don't have it, then you start to lose out on the value of what you're doing. And then you start winding up saying, why am I doing all this? Why am I doing all this? And technically, nobody on the outside can answer that for you. Only you can answer that. And hopefully you knew, or you had a strong why when you came in, because even going into this profession nowadays, especially nowadays, if you don't have a strong why, you may not always discover it as you're in this profession through these challenging times. You may have to kind of go in with a strong why, and then kind of figure it out as you move forward. But yeah, and I wanted to mention one thing with the depth of training before we move to the next thing, guys. Just kind of, people from the outside looking in, just know that, when you look at a correctional officer, or when you read about them in the news and people start saying guard, you can understand where the insult may be, because if the public perspective may kind of minimize what type of training a guard gets, where that officer title highlights so much more. So it's not a sake of vanity, but rather a sake of understanding that the system has evolved, and with that, our titles have evolved. So it's like when the agenda pushes against the system, they love to call us guards, because, especially when we do something good, they'll love to call us guards, because it's still kind of, yeah, we did great, but the system's still here. That's still a guard that's doing great. But yet when you mess up, they'll quick to say officer, because they want to call themselves officers, and look what they're doing. It's just that political agenda. The next one, we got a comment. Hold on. Aren't a lot of former military? Oh, yes, 100%, Jojo. I've worked with a lot of, I still work with a lot of former military. They cross right in, right, Russ? Would you agree?
Yeah, it's usually, an opportunity for them because, they're used to, they're in the military. And so, what's the next thing over from that is things that are, paramilitary. A lot of them have a lot of training that's concomitant with with what we do, firearms and keeping order and, doing the sort of things that are, sometimes a little bit tricky, sometimes a little bit dangerous. And, people that go through a lot of, intense situations. And I'm not saying that it doesn't, necessarily have a deleterious effect on people, but a lot of times you go through things and, you come, you see, you conquer, that kind of thing. It makes you very good at sorting things out that are dangerous, high order situations really quickly and really efficiently. And you're not stopping and just staring and freezing up. You've been through enough things that you just go, oh yeah, we just got to go over here and put these guys down and and do the things that you have to do to maintain order. So most of them just fit right in, and I've served alongside so many of them I can't even count.
Yeah, me too. Again, same type of thing that Russ said. It's the
It's a shout, and it's shout out because tomorrow,
Yeah, so Veterans Day. Happy
Veterans Day. So
yes, and then so the next one I got is the emotional toll of the job. Real quick, so in corrections, just through the routine of it all, you are going to deal with very stressful situations. Pretty much could be on a day-to-day basis. And it's not something that you want to kind of just brush off. I mean, each situation could be unique, and you don't want to get so caught up in the fact that you're dealing with it on a routine level that it erodes your want to maybe just talk about it at some level, whether you want to talk to your peers or even at some level. I still got to mention talking to your family because they know you. They know the person who wears the uniform. So I have, daily stressors like the high stress conditions of the environment, including the unpredictability and constant vigilance required. I mean, not even just the type of environment we're in, but we don't even know when we get to go home nowadays. So just going into work and not knowing when you can leave. Then you got the trauma exposure. So obviously we deal with a lot of traumatic events. We may witness violent events every day, violent confrontations, medical emergencies, or mental health crises among inmates. But with that said, we also should have a strong support system in play, which means that, when we go through an incident, however dramatic it may be, there should be teams in play that even if it's not requested, they go out and they get a feel for what's going on, the temperature, and making sure that staff is able to still continue and commit to the work that must be done. Now, Russ, I'm going to tell you something real quick when it comes to this emotional toll on the job. I think, and it's taken a while, but this is an area where we're starting to evolve and get a little bit better in. I think there is more push for mental health awareness in corrections. I see more articles being put out through the organizations. I see agencies pushing for wellness and morale initiatives. So I do know it's going in a good direction. But with that said, I still feel that we ourselves on the front line still have to accept the initiative. I think there's still some distrust there. And also, I think we've gotten to this point where if you feel you're vulnerable, you're going to have to find the strength to admit that so you don't let it pile up and unfortunately, let it get worse. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think that, that's 100% correct. And it's something that, I think bothers us, a lot of the time. I've known quite a number of, officers, who have taken their life. And I know that, beyond that, there's a lot more that have been put in positions, where their mental health has suffered. And so when you see that, you want to do something to help, but sometimes we remain our own worst enemies. But I think that that's, part of the evolution of this whole thing, though, are places that you can come, for, comradeship, friendship, and even the training and knowledge and history, like Keepers of Chaos, like Tier Talk. And that, there's lots of us out there, who are willing to help. And I think that that's an aspect of it too. But getting to the point where people actually reach out is much more difficult. But I think by broadening, how do I say this? By broadening those resources, I think that there's a better chance for people to be able to finally open up, because you have it at work, you have it on your phone, you have it with your neighbor down the street that also works at the joint. And I think that all of those things together will probably, in the end, make us a lot more successful.
Yeah, and I always tell the staff it's not about turning off or on anything. It's more about trying to find balance, because at the end of the day, you can't just click on and become a CEO and click off and be human again. That's an impossibility. We're human. It's going to bleed into each other. But I think a lot of people that from the outside don't really understand what happens behind that wall. And basically, I don't think they understand that maybe 25 years is, for this type of profession, bravo if you're able to complete the 25 years, but it's a lot, because it's every day you're working in an environment that you can't escape from, not even for a moment. Like if you're on the streets, maybe you can go to get a place to eat and whatever. We're always in that environment. You have a bad day, you got to go back the next day. You suffer through a traumatic event. Well, you got to go back there if you want to continue making money. I mean, you can't go to another neighborhood. You literally got to go right back into the same facility and find a way to cope with the pressures of the job. And I think location does matter too, because sometimes changing scenery can help, where in corrections we don't have that change of scenery, so or the other thing is, let's say you get assaulted by an inmate, and it's really bad. And now I'm working around inmates all around me wearing the same type of uniform as the person who assaulted me. I mean, there's just so many things in our environment that prevents us from mentally escaping it, that we have to find a way to find closure for each incident, which means that we have to find a way to revisit it within ourselves, hopefully with mental help if need be, or someone we trust that's close with us. Because if we don't find closure, the problem is we're not going to be ready to go back to work, because anything can excite us, because the environment we're in will truly trigger our mind, because we don't have a way to escape it. That's a big thing. Someone asked a great question, Russ. I thought we could answer real quick before we get on to the next one. I got a few questions coming in, so we're going to answer the question too, by the way. Yeah, that's why we do it. So I thought the first question, Russ, was a good one. If you want to attack it, I'll go after you. Do you still remember what your first day was like? If so, how was it?
Oh man. So I would guess, if I'm talking about, my very first day, actually at the joint at San Quentin, it was quite a deal. And what happened is we were just done with the academy. We had the weekend to go home, and then we had to show up Monday morning at, I want to say it was like 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. And so we got there and had this, enormous mountain of a sergeant. I'll never forget him. B.B. McGriff was his name. And he said, "Hey, we're not going to be doing the orientation. We have an emergency search to do." And I thought, oh my God, I mean, I don't even know, exactly what an emergency search is, even though, we've spent all this time in the academy. But he said that what happened is an officer was walking by a cell, and the inmate in it asked him if he could hand coffee to the next cell. And so he took the coffee and he looked down in the cup and he poured it out, and there was a little piece of plastic down in there. And he went to the cell that he was supposed to, and they ended up having to extract these individuals. But in the other cell, this piece of plastic, it turned out fit the security light nuts. And they opened it up, and there was 7 steel shanks in there, obviously meant for staff. They weren't going to be able to get them out to yard through the metal detector, that's for sure. And that one guy's name, I remember it well because it was my own name. His name was Billy Ray Hamilton. And anyway, he was a white supremacist guy, killed a bunch of people at a grocery store in Fresno, and he was on death row. And so we ended up searching all of death row, or at least our part of it, which was East Block, Bayside, tiers 1 through 5. And, this was something just totally, like I'd never seen before. We had to take these guys and handcuff them to the rails, outside the cell after we strip searched them and wanded them and gone into the cells and taken the security lights apart. And it was just one after another after another. And so that was my very first day. And then after that, then you don't get to go home because I don't know if somebody called in sick or we were just actually down a lot of officers. And then it was time for me to go to my next job, and spend 8 hours up on the other death row, which was North Block 6th tier. They called that the shelf, and spend some quality time with Robert Alton Harris up there. Who was later, I think it was 2 or 3 years after that they actually finally executed him. So that was what my very, very first day was like. And then after that, we went back to normal, and we did our 4 more days of orientation. And then it wasn't until the next Monday after that I did my actual first real shift, where I showed up and I wasn't drafted, and I was actually like put on a job site, and that was East Block, Bayside, 5th tier.
My first day, so not counting the academy, because we went to the academy first. So after I did about 4 or 5 months in the academy, we went to our facility. I worked at a female facility when I first started my career. So ever since then, I've been transferred 6 times. But in accordance with moving up in my career. So there were good things. But I remember for me, there's so many things you could discuss here on your first day, but for me, I was just so overwhelmed with just all the different people you're going to be interacting with, from the officers to the civilians to the inmates. I remember in order for me to get to the unit, my first unit that I had to work in, I had to walk through the max yard to get into the unit. You had to get buzzed in, whatever. They have to call the gate. I think it was gate 9 or something. And then you'd have to walk in. So as soon as you're walking in, everybody's looking at you. They're just staring at you. And I remember being nervous about that. I think I actually have the story in one of my books, I think. I do. I think it's in the book, Managing Inmate Behavior. I forget, but I remember that I had to feel the professional role before I actually was the professional, because the moment they started looking at you, I had to find confidence in me somewhere, because I did not want to keep my head down. Not that I'm going to go stare straight at them, but usually when you get all these people looking at you and you never met them before, and they're from all different walks of life, I don't know, the first thing for me was to basically turn around and maybe look down and just get to the unit to avoid the stares. But I didn't do that. I within the first couple of steps, I wind up lifting my head and walking straight to the unit, and meeting with the officer, trying to understand what the job was about, what I was getting myself into. I actually had a very good first exchange with my officer that I relieved. I really can't say that I had a negative experience on my first day. I had people that showed support, which was very good for me, because at this time I was still learning the job. So I didn't really have any inward confidence. So my confidence came from the people around me, policy and procedure. I didn't have any experience. So, no discretion here. But I would say, I think for me, I made it intentional. I will tell you this. I knew that was something that would get to me. So I made it intentional to meet people, to interact with the inmates, to interact with the officers. because I figured the quicker I could build some professional familiarity with people, I wouldn't be so overwhelmed with having strangers staring at me. So I figured I wanted to balance it out and start building some positive professional relationships with the people around me. And I made that pretty much my intentional effort. And that's been my intentional effort throughout my career, because, by the way, guys, I've moved up into so many different facilities that I've started this process over and over and over and over again. And I figure the best way to do that is to kind of embrace the chance to create these professional relationships. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, and that first day that you show up to, it's kind of funny because you know what, you're all new and shiny, and your Sam Brown belt, is just glistening, and everything is creased right, and you don't have any wear on your boots, and everyone knows, an inmate that's never seen you before, or even if it's his first day there, he knows that you're brand new, and so you're in to be tested and challenged by all of these individuals, and it starts on day one, and and there's just no help in that. You just have to be able to get beyond it. And I think that having the benefit of hindsight and experience and seasoning, and especially with a lot of extra salt and stuff, is different now looking back at it. But when you first start, I mean, it's a culture shock. It really is. But you get beyond that and you grow and you learn things.
Yeah, I got. I guess we're gonna have to go back to our topic. But I got another question. I figure let's answer the question.
Let's do them.
So let me read this whole thing, because I think he's got a couple things here. So I want to read. So first, he has any advice on Rikers Island being a corrections officer. Then he goes, I'm at the last step. I need to decide whether I want to do a job in New York City. Corrections officer, any help would be very much appreciated. 32 years old here, white male. And also, what's the odds of getting urine and feces thrown at a CO? Can we respond by disciplining the inmate, or we just have to take it? So there's a lot of good questions. So I'll go first with this real quick, and then
okay.
So any advice on Rikers being a correct? Okay, so listen, I know a lot of people who work at Rikers. Me and Russ has done a lot of stuff for Rikers Island. I mean, I used to have a very strong contact with their former union president, Eliza Susamadeen. I still talk to Tyson Jones. I still talk to a few people. Listen, the profession, Rikers Island may not be seen in the best of light right now. I think a lot of it's political agenda. I do. But I also feel there are concerns there that at Rikers Island, unfortunately, it may have fallen back a bit. But I do know that there's a lot of professionals there that are doing what they can to keep the place holding up. They believe in the work that they do, and they find value in the work that they do. So I would say that when it comes to finding value in this work, whether you're at Rikers or Jersey, it doesn't matter. That's on you. That's just connecting with the right people, making sure they're aligned with what you're hoping to get from this profession, because this is a career nonetheless. Is it an easy career? No. I mean, I'm not going to tell you when the answer to this is, oh yeah, Rikers is going to be a cakewalk. It's not. It's going to be challenging in ways that you could never imagine. But I will say that if you know that this is going to be a career and this is something you want to do and you're holding on to something worth fighting for, Rikers could either make you or it could break you. There is no middle here. There's just, for Rikers, there is no middle. Either you're going to go out and come on top and be that warrior you could be, or it's going to eat you alive. I mean, I'm sad to say, but that's not even just about the corrections profession, but just also more about Rikers. So if you're going to prepare to go into this profession and prepare to enter Rikers, I would honestly say this got to go beyond making money for you. This has got to go beyond medical, any perk about that, I'm going to join this profession. I got a good salary. No, this is not about the perk. This is about going in there and trying to, I don't know, impact change, whatever it is that you feel has value when you decide to work at Rikers. But again, it's a very difficult choice because there's no easy answer to this. Either you're going to go in day one and realize it's not for you, or you're going to go in day one and say, I can do this and deal with the challenges, but you're really not going to know until you open up that door and enter that facility. So I would say, before I give it to Russ, is any advice? I can't tell you whether it's going to work out for you or not until you have the courage to give it a try. I mean, that to me would be the best, my best thought. Russ?
So, on Keepers of Chaos, we have people that work or have worked at Rikers. Rikers is a special case, not because of where it is or what it does, but because of the current, political zeitgeist of New York State and New York City. That's just the way it is. There's a lot of politicians that are, putting a bunch of bullshit moves in over there, and it's caused reactions. It's caused reactions from the labor union there. It's caused reactions from the staff there, and they have put the staff there in a somewhat untenable position. So having said that, it's probably not ideal. However, places like that, under the conditions that are currently manifesting themselves there, leaves open an excellent opportunity to establish yourself in a way that probably can't be done at some easier places. And that's going to be something that you were only going to, reap the benefits of further down the line in your career. Hey, I was at Rikers, back in, 2024. And, we had to take it back from the inmates, and, we did this and that. And the politics was against us, and the inmates were against us, and the inmate families were against us. And we made it better. I'm hoping that that's what the story is going to be. It's going to take a lot of dedicated professionals to wrest a victory out from that. But like I say, that challenge presents an opportunity. You have zero experience at this point. You don't really know what you're doing, but that doesn't mean that your level of dedication might not make a difference. So that's something for you to have to decide. And it's very difficult right now. I want everybody possible, to stand up and step forward and help out, especially in these problem areas. And we know that across the country, Rikers is the hot spot right now. We have some other bad things happening right here in California, my home state right now, where the political climate is just as bad. They're committing us to this Norway model, and it's getting officers hurt badly, to be quite frankly, in my opinion, because there's no discipline left. But it takes great people stepping forward, even at the beginning of their career, to start to move the markers and to start being able to march toward victory. I hope you're one of those people. I really do.
Yeah, and he asked the other question about being urine or having feces thrown on you. Okay, so I'm gonna. I was gonna answer that one real quick. I was just gonna say,
having had it done to me a few times.
Yeah, I think it. So sadly, this has been an uptick lately. I think the basic concern is that the inmates could safely splash you, whether it's from the side of the cell or hopefully you're controlling the food ports correctly. But, any need to go right in. Sometimes people see it as retaliatory. So they fear it's a safe thing that they could splash you. And unfortunately, that has gone up a lot lately. But we always encourage that you still discipline them, because hopefully your prosecutor picks it up and puts it as criminal charges. And I believe Rikers has a very strong union. And I believe that when it comes to any attack on staff, even if it's not being taken by the officials who work at Rikers. I believe the union actually takes you right over to the police station to report it. So you definitely, I will tell you one thing, if you do get splashed with feces or urine, there's a couple of things that if you want to push the charges, there's a couple of things that you got to make sure that you do. One is if you do get splashed, you definitely got to charge the inmate because you want to have an institutional record of it. Two, when you got splashed, you want to note what it smelled like. You want to note that it smelled like urine or it smelled like feces. You don't want to just say I got splashed with liquid. You want to spell it out. You know, this is what I got splashed with, and it had a strong sense of urine, or it had a strong sense of feces, or I got splashed with brown liquid. I mean, you got to make sure, because if they ever go to push it out, because believe it or not, getting splashed with water, a prosecutor may say, but once you get splashed and you can clearly identify what you've been splashed with, so the smell of urine or brown liquid or blood or vomit, whatever it is, the body, semen, you know, I mean, you got to be able to make sure you're as clear as possible that if you got hit with bodily fluid, that you can explain exactly what that bodily fluid is. And here's another thing that a lot of people don't do that you must do. You must request to go to medical. It's you got to make sure that when, after you've been splashed, that you seek medical attention. They're going to want that on the record. So once you get splashed, regardless of where you get splashed, you know what? I would like to seek medical just to make sure I didn't get anything in my hands, eyes, whatever it is. But go ahead, Russ. I mean, that's usually, if you hit those areas, that usually puts you in a good position.
So number one is prevention, of course, right? And that's being aware of where guys are, being aware of what cuts they've got in their cell. You know, you should be trying to remove all of that stuff every opportunity you have, every time you get them out of there. You know what? If a guy's acting hinky, man, just don't go by the cell. Tell him to step to the back. If he doesn't step to the back, then you got to go around down the other stairs or whatever. Be smart about doing things that are preventative to you. You know, sometimes you can get, you know, the moving shield on wheels and go by or whatever. Every place has a few different things and a few different items and a few, you know, different ways to try and do the preventative thing. Prevention is where we want to go. Prevention is where we want to be in every case. However, having said that, it's going to happen sometimes, right? And so then when it does happen, like what we would do is, number one is I'm sending my officer to go clean up and to go to medical, and until he's cleared by medical, he's not coming back. Was the way that we did it. But the second thing that we did is we had an area for them to go and put on a clean uniform. Right, we had some extra jumpsuits set aside just for that purpose. Take the other jumpsuit, put it in a paper bag, and then it gets checked into evidence, right? Because we are going to prosecute that individual because it is a felony. At least it is in California, or at least it was. You know, I try and keep my ear to the ground. I haven't heard anything different, so we'll say that. And then you want to do all of those things in your report, like Anthony said. You know, what it looked like, about how much there was, where it struck you, what you did with that evidence, you know, where you logged it in, where you checked it in, what it smelled like, etc. All of that good stuff. And then, you know, that's the end of it. I would personally like to see, once again, some attention really paid to this, and, you know, really put, you know, more inmates on notice for doing that or for attacking us in any other way. I'm a believer. I would like to see a nationwide experiment with suing the crap out of these people every time that they did something, and forcing them to never again be able to afford crackers and cheese, you know, through the canteen, as it were. You know, hit them every which way, civilly, criminally, you know, at the institutional level, take away, you know, everything from them all the time, every time. But we all need to be on the same page. We all need to be operating by a set of principles like that. We need people to understand that civil suits are possible and probably necessary, but it needs to become where it's automatic, both the filing of charges and both the civil action on these suckers, because that is part of prevention as well, believe it or not.
Right, and I want to mention something too, not to minimize responsibility, but deterrence, as we're mentioning, is one thing. But I will say a lot of splashing occurs because we're not on point with our own practices, with our own tactical application of what's expected. Something as simple as, if you're dealing in restorative housing unit inmates, before you open up that food port, are you telling them to go all the way back to the cell? Tell them to face the door. Are you opening the food port correctly? Where they are away. Sometimes, I get the splashes through the cracks. I mean, sometimes you could put something up or walk around with the shield. But sometimes you see people getting splashed when they didn't have to get splashed. It's like, when'd you get splashed? Well, he splashed me through the food port. Oh, did you tell the inmate to go to the back of the cell? Or how many food ports did you open at once? Are you opening up one food port at a time, or are you opening up a row so you can move things quicker? And then next thing you know, you're not. So I would say, deterrence is one thing. Of course, you could do the punitive side, but sometimes even the deterrence, the prosecutor may decide to pick it up and then run it concurrently, which means basically it gets absorbed in their current sentence as opposed to running it consecutive. So it depends on, you have some people that may say they're going to go hard on crime and they're going to prosecute. And then you see that the sentence is concurrent. And it's like, oh, that was a joke. But then you get the people that really are hard on crime and they'll say, no, you want to play that game? Fine. When you're done with that sentence, 3 to 5 more years for what you just did, attacking a law enforcement professional behind the wall. But concurrent, consecutive, that matters. But outside of deterrence, I would also like to add your make sure you are tactically aware, because most of the time when there's splashing, unfortunately, if you really look at some of the videos, there are some failures that have measures that have been put in place to help you that you've become complacent in. He also mentioned it's a cold, tough world, and the ones who are behind bars are the worst of them all. Dealing with these types of people daily takes a lot of mental. It does, but it's still a great job to have. Now, Russ, I got the next one. We'll try to keep it going as we get more questions. Okay. Now, I wanted to mention this. This matters to me, and guys, keep the questions coming because we could take a break on each one to answer the questions. But remember, people have a primitive role of what we do, and I like to always emphasize that we go beyond just guarding individuals. We have interactions with inmates on a daily basis. And I think this is also for us on the inside to know. I think a lot of us kind of have a chance to create an impact and don't. So I put for roles beyond guarding. I think correctional officers serve as informal mentors. They encourage inmates to participate in programming and make positive choices, which we do. We also support programs. So officers' involvement in programs focused on life skills, job readiness, and addiction recovery, helping inmates prepare for reintegration, because we're the ones that are helping the programs get those inmates. And if the inmate is not feeling a certain, sometimes we're back at the unit trying to convince the inmate, come on, you got to go. You need this. And then it's also behavior management. Basically the officer's role in maintaining a positive environment by managing inmate behavior and reinforcing constructive action. I mean, and Russ will tell you this. I mean, most of the time we get inmates to comply. It's not always going to be physical force that's moving them from point A to B. I mean, it starts off with maybe a discussion, and then eventually some level of motivation to get the inmate where they need to go. But I think a lot of people don't realize that some of these inmates are looking at these officers, and they may not say anything, but they could see the officer as a role model. So how you carry yourself matters, because if you don't carry yourself professionally or respectfully, the inmates that actually may be looking to do the right thing, maybe looking to get out one day, won't have the respect for you. So I always assume, and Russ made this too, that Russ said this, we said this in the past, that, always do the right thing, because at the end of the day, there is somebody there that could be looking up to you, may not admit it, especially in this environment. But then one day you're out there in the real world and an inmate comes up to you that you don't recognize because they were never a problem, but they know you, and they come to you and they keep it quick. They just say, "Hey, Officer Hamilton, I don't know if you remember me. You probably don't, but you were my unit officer for 5 years, and I'm going to tell you one thing, and this is one of the best compliments you can ever have. When you were on the unit, I knew it was operating the right way. I knew, issues would be resolved. I knew it was safe, but I felt better when you were on the unit. I like that. It makes you feel good. It's not manipulation. The guy's out. But Russ, what's your thoughts on that? Going beyond just guarding.
Yeah, we are there for, three basic things, public safety, staff safety, and inmate safety, right? And so what we're doing is we're not there, see, how do I say this? We're not there to observe and respond. We are there to preempt and prevent. Right. The two P's I always pick out, prevent and preempt. We're out there to be proactive in what we're doing. We are out there to stop things ahead of time. If we're always going to be reactionary, we're always going to fail, and we're always going to have, less. Well, every outcome is going to be less than optimal, but we're going to have outcomes that are much less than optimal outcomes. So, understand that, the things that we do, are not about just observing and responding to things. It can't be that. And, you get to choose the type of officer that you want to be. I chose to be an impact officer. I chose to try and make, every shift a little bit safer. I put myself out there, and did I take a lot of flack for that? Yes, I did. But I felt that, it was within me, to stop a lot of things before they ever got started. And, if you're that type of officer, chances are you're never going to know, even at the end of your career, how many serious things that you stopped before they got started, because we don't get to, add up the stats of things that didn't happen that day. And so that is how I was able to feel comfortable in my own skin and doing the things that I did and operating the way that I operated. And to think that, I found value in myself. Sometimes I got that from some supervisors. Sometimes I got that from my peers. Sometimes I got that from my inmates. But it wasn't very often. And I sure didn't get it from the public. And so, every morning when you're in there and you're looking at that man or that woman in the mirror, you have to be able to find that value in what you're doing. And sometimes it has to come from yourself. And you're the only one sometimes that can answer that question. Am I impacting? Am I being impactful at my job? Am I doing the things that does make the public safer, that does make my brothers and sisters that are out here on the line with me safer? And am I making it safer for the inmates? Because I'll tell you what, I have saved a gang of inmates. Not to emphasize the gang thing too much, but I've made a lot of saves on inmates. And it was just, that thing that you have to adapt yourself to doing, and you just have to go forward. And I think at the end of it, I was grateful that I had the career that I did, because I enjoyed it, and I managed to get through it every day. And, not every day was a diamond. There were a lot of stones in there. But overall, man, the men and women that I worked with, my supervisors, the people that I supervised, it was just, there were just some great days that were fantastic. Even on days where we would have a riot, we'd be out there, 150 guys deep, applying handcuffs all over the yard. And still, it was a fantastic day. It wasn't optimal, but it was our day to spend together and to adapt, overcome, and even have fellowship.
Yeah, I think for me, I love what you're saying, Russ. I mean, even he mentioned, Sabim said, you're right, some inmates might look at how you carry yourself and that reflects on them. And you had the young lady here who actually bumped into an inmate at Walmart. And I think they remember the good ones as well as they remember the bad ones. But they will remember you. It's because there's a lot less of you than there are of them. And I think for me, one of the things that has helped me in my career at all levels, not just as an officer, but especially now in prison management now, is I learned from day one to embrace conflict. As crazy as this may sound, both as a growing, both as an opportunity to grow, but also knowing that it's going to happen. I think the one thing about corrections that's different in most professions is that people try to avoid conflict. For some reason, conflict is, she said, yeah, you didn't even remember the inmate. Yeah, it's true. I think that in most professions, you try to avoid conflict. It makes sense, right? But in corrections, you're going to have to go into it. It's just who you are, especially when you move up in management. You're going to have to get involved in conflict because you can't allow it to settle. You can't allow it to turn into some, divide or generalized assumptions that divide the workplace. So for me, knowing from day one that this is going to be an environment where it's not all hunky-dory, where, you got to face the conflict the moment there's a spark, because most people hope the spark puts itself out in the real world. And corrections, this world, we don't deal with difficult problems. We deal with complex problems. What's the difference? Difficult problems usually have a solution. Complex problems, they don't stop. You just turn your head for 1 minute and it's not that it goes away. It's going to get bigger and more, a bigger concern to solve. So for me, the big thing about me is I don't let the spark become a flame. And I'm telling you something, guys, that's helped me throughout my career in decision-making, problem solving. Pretty much down the road, it's helped me become a better officer, prison manager, whatever you want me to be, because I have the courage just to get involved, but there's one other caveat to that that I want to mention in an effort to solve conflict, because even at the higher level where I sit, sometimes you'll have conflict between departments. Maybe, usually the conflict between inmates will be handled by the officers, but even as you move up, the conflicts become a little bit more complex because they're bigger issues. They're issues that relate to the house as a whole. So the problems become a little bit more complex. But I learned, so as an officer, when I was dealing with the inmates and there were conflicts, I would try to take control of the situation and then hopefully get compliance, whatever it is. But as you start to move up and you realize that you're not going to have all the answers, but you do still got to have the courage to embrace conflict, because you are going to have conflict. You're just not going to have the answers. Not only do you got to know when to take the ball and take control, you got to learn when to give the ball off and know that you're not the person to solve the problem. It's like, okay, I know there's a problem. I'm going to get involved, but where's Russ? Because once I get involved, I'm going to need Russ here because I got to pass this ball off. But I think embracing conflict has been a gift for me throughout my career, and I think it's a gift for me now in the real world. Hold on, we got another question here, Russ. How does this career impact your family, wife, kids? I read CEOs miss a lot of holidays, events, and important dates because they're constantly working overtime. Russ, you want to go with that one first?
Yeah, it's very problematic. It's much more problematic for the younger officers, because one, they don't have enough seniority to get them to where they need to be, and generally they usually have young children. It gets easier as you get older in this profession. You get more experience, you get more seniority, you get better days off generally. And so it becomes less of a thing. I would say that, if you have young children, and the institutions that you're looking at have just rip roaring overtime, and you're going to be constantly saddled with, mandatories that you can't get beyond, it's probably not a good fit for you. But if the overtime is manageable, and hey, you're not so bad on 1 or 2 days a week, if that's all that you're being mandatory to do, you can deal with that. Gives you a little bit of extra money. It gives you, maybe you can work your schedule in a way that you can take maybe some more time off in the summer with the kids. You use that money to go to Disneyland, and that becomes your ability to do that. It is so different, and it is so variable across the country, from county to county, to metropolitan area, to state by state with the corrections, with the state corrections and stuff. That you really should research it before you jump into it, and see what fits your lifestyle, because it's so varied, that I can only tell you that is what you should do, right? And beyond that, to try and look, for departments that are going to give you the most training, the most status, the best equipment, the best pay, best area to live in. Look at me. I loved what I did in California Department of Corrections, but man, getting out of this state is hard, and this is, this has become a terrible, terrible state to live in. But it just is what it is. So try and think about the future a little bit, and try and, play things out in your mind and game this thing the best that you can.
Yeah, I think for me, your family, you're in a first responder profession. So just by title alone, it's a profession that is going to require you to make sacrifices. And I think your family has to know about that going in. And I know, sadly, the sacrifices, they're real here. Your sacrifice, I'm not just your safety, whatever. I was working in prison, but also your time with your family. There's a lot that you sacrifice because this profession warrants it. There's no way around it, unfortunately. Sometimes if you have a facility that has good peer-to-peer accountability, overtime lessons, because everybody takes care of each other. If you have young kids, they'll work the holidays. You could have a facility that does have a strong family environment, or you could have a facility that, like, I'm just calling out, I don't care who's affected by it. I don't care if you're supposed to go to your kids on Christmas. I just don't want to work today. I've seen facilities that are smaller in nature that are strong because they can hold each other accountable. And then there's facilities that are bigger where it's hard to hold people accountable because you may not see them every day. But I think it's really having to sit down with your family and letting them know what you're going into, because the biggest thing is not having the support for the sacrifices. That's the biggest concern, because then you're working the facility and you're more concerned about going home and confronting your family because you weren't at an event. So I think your family has to play a very strong role in understanding what those sacrifices are, so you don't have to carry that with you when you're working in the facility, because you need your mind to be where it needs to be. But there's another aspect on that I think that gets forgotten, is if you start to lose out on the value of what you're doing and the important work behind what you're doing, then the sacrifice doesn't translate well to your family. So therefore, they don't understand why you're not at an event or what's so important that you can't be at this event. So my family knows right off the bat, if I'm busy and the job calls and I have to go in, they understand the importance of my work. I'm managing a prison, so they don't see, they're upset, but they know I don't have a choice in the matter. It's my job. So they understand if there's a sacrifice being made, because they understand that I wouldn't have to go in if I wasn't needed, if my role wasn't that important. So there's a sense of necessity. So with that said, I translate that well with my family. And if it does happen, I'm upset too, but I got to go, and I don't have to worry about my family waiting for me when I return to yell at me for missing an event. So I feel that translation we don't do all the time. I feel that we get so hung up in the profession, the bad of it all, that eventually we start minimizing our value to the profession. Like, oh, I'm getting overtime all the time, and it sucks. And you know what? This profession just sucks. I don't know why I'm doing it. This is a bunch of bullshit. And next thing you know, you start minimizing the value of the profession because you're mad at situation that cannot change. And then now the problem is the value that you don't have no more. There's no value translating to your family when you make a sacrifice. So they don't understand why you have to be there because, hey, you're saying the place can go on without you, or they can close that post. Why are they calling you today? If you told me yesterday that these posts don't matter, and it doesn't work that way. I mean, if you're being mandated, I'm assuming you're being mandated because you have to work, because that post has to be filled. And that's a promise that you made when you took the job. So with that said, you got to make sure you translate that value to the job back to your family and the importance of those sacrifices, or they will be the burden behind the wall. Thanks, Kaz. Appreciate you, brother. Now I got another one while we wait for more questions. Let's see. So I wanted to do, Russ, I thought maybe you could start off with this. I got risk. Oh, wait, no, sorry. We did roles beyond guarding. So I got risk and safety challenges. So in corrections, obviously, we have risk, the officers face. They include potentials for assault, riots, contraband smuggling. I mean, the list goes on. We have to know safety protocols, such as searches, cell checks, monitoring that are in place to protect both the officer and the inmate. Let's not forget that. And the training that comes with that, how we go through drills, emergency protocols, including riot control, medical emergency responses, and lockdown procedures. And here's what's unique. We talked about training before. But remember, when you work in a prison or jail, it's like a little city that you're managing. A lot of the training that we're doing here to maintain what's behind that prison wall is easily applicable to the outside world. That puts us up a notch in what we're able to do to provide assistance. What's your thoughts on all that, Russ? The risk and safety challenges.
This is the big thing that that I dealt with, on a daily basis, because there was always risk of something happening. There was always risk of being exposed to drugs. There was always risk of, being exposed to a dangerous disease. There was always risk of being assaulted. There was always risk of, getting your hand slammed in a cell door, through nobody's fault. There was always risk of getting your hand slammed in a cell door because of somebody's fault. And all of these things, add up. There's threats and intimidation, and the list just goes on. And then you have inmates, assaulting each other, and I'll tell you, and Anthony and I have talked about this several times in the past. There were several times in my career where, my first duties every day was about, controlled seating in a dining hall, especially for breakfast. Breakfast is where I did it most often. And the number of things that happened to me in those dining halls, especially, starting out at, San Quentin every morning. And the first thing I did was I would feed what we called the category J's, and they were the crazy ones, right? And when you're controlled seating and telling people to sit in particular individualized seats, and you're expected to be able to, knuckle them under to your iron steadfast will. It can be quite a morning doing that. And then the next thing was, I'd see, it was like 100 and something, what we call the extended term inmates that were just coming in to do, any sentence over 15 years. And sometimes it was 15 years and sometimes it was 25 to life, whatever it was. And so I'd have to seat all those guys. And do you think that they want to sit down at the exact bench, or seat that you point to? No, they're not real thrilled with you either. And then there's just the general population. So these things go on and on and on throughout your day, and you're constantly having to assess risk. You're constantly, having to sometimes respond to things. Sometimes they're busier than others. And on top of all this, you have to make sure that you're maintaining your training and your firearms qualifications, and all of these things, are sometimes weigh very heavy on you, in a day after day fashion. But this is what we do. This is what the entire job is truly all about: is risk and safety, and finding the balances. Because sometimes you're going to have to take risks, and some people aren't comfortable with that. Some people want surety, and there's not much surety to be had in any given shift, let alone over a period of time. So anyway, it's the people that can do that on a day in and day out basis, and go in there to the dining halls and wrangle control out of chaos. I think that corrections, as I said once before, just a little bit earlier, we're a special breed.
Yeah, and guy, I want to mention something. So Florida CO said Florida CO can pretty much forget about having Xmas and New Year's off until they make it to admin shift. So I see a little bit of a shot there. I want to mention something real quick. So, and it's all in fairness. It's not to minimize the work that's being done every day behind that wall, because obviously there are people that need to be at their post. That's what their job entails. So for correctional officers, their job is to be at that post. Their job is to relieve the officers that have worked at their post or that need to get home. Admin, yes, we manage the prisons. I don't know where everybody comes from, but we make sacrifices as we move up. I mean, I know at one point I had weekends off and I wanted to move up, and I had to sacrifice my weekends off to start again, to make the next supervisor, to make the next rank, so there's always going to be sacrifices that are made. When I was an officer, I worked my way to weekends, lost it when I became a sergeant. Got weekends when I was a sergeant, but then had to move to a whole nother jail or a whole nother prison. I apologize, when I moved up, and now I've been transferred 6 times or 7 times already. So, there's all different types of sacrifices, but one of the sacrifices admin makes is, I know people take work home with them. I'm not saying that. Some people go home emotionally, but some actually do take work home with them, which means that when we're at home, we're running the jail still. Which, to be honest with you, I rather be at work running the jail or running the prison than being at home, because your family, when you're at home, they expect you to be home. That's the thing, that when you're getting the phone calls and you're getting ready to watch a movie, and then you got to pause the movie every 5 minutes because, something's happened at the facility that you got to be notified of. Now you're affecting their home life. Now your work is impeding on their home life. And then it gets to a point where it's like, you know what? Let me just go to the facility because it will be better. Well, we want you home. Yeah, but I got to go to the facility because right now, my work has now affected you at home. I can't control that. So with that said, there's all different sacrifices being made. And I know that we're going through a lot of, people get mandated, but a big part of solving that is a big level of peer-to-peer accountability. I still agree with that, knowing that management is the highest level of accountability, but facilities that don't have those heavy mandates or those heavy drafts are because they're holding each other accountable. But let me tell you something, when you have to work from home, when you're getting those phone calls and it's like, well, you know what? Yeah, I am home, but am I really home? I mean, when I was an officer, when my day ended, the day ended. It was done. Whether it was 8 hours or whether it was 16, it was done. When you start moving up into the supervisory roles, and you start getting the management, the day doesn't end so quick. You'll be in your car, you're still getting phone calls, and then still traveling throughout the night getting the phone calls. So I feel that even though people may not see you on site, doesn't mean that you're not there. Yeah, Russ.
Yeah. I'm not sure, but I don't think this guy means admin. I think he means admin shift, where officers are working Monday to Friday with Saturday, Sundays off, and aren't buttressed by people who are relieving them, or they're relieving. I'm not exactly sure on that, because he still says that it's officers. But
well, I heard. Well, once I see it, because then, no offense, the
he says admin shift.
Yeah, but Russ, it's how he categorizes it as the admin shift, though.
I know,
So
but he
he's
says floor,
automatically.
but he says COs can pretty much
Yeah, but even if
forget.
it's the COs, he categorizes the admin shift as 8 to 4 or 9 to 5 with weekends
Yeah,
off. So I'm
right.
assuming it's the same thing, Russ. It's just it may be officers working the admin shift, but what you're
Yeah,
saying about admin. So I said the only difference is that admin shifts don't end like people think they do. They it's part of the responsibility. Trust me, when you start working at a crazy facility, admin's just as busy. You just don't see all the stuff that they're doing, but they're the ones that are also taking ultimate responsibility of everything that happens in that facility. So I just don't think it's. I know a lot of people may think that it's easier. Whatever the days it's. I spend more time actually working than I ever did when I was an officer or a supervisor. To be honest with you, because it also depends on where you work. If you work at a very chaotic facility, behind the scenes, who do you think's making sense of all the individual incidences that have to make its way up and cleaned up before they get forwarded up past the house? So every time there's one incident that occurs that could busy up one team, okay, but then if there's multiple, we're getting them all, and they all have to get piled up, and then we have to deal with it on the managerial side, making sure everything looks nice and in a nice little pretty bow. So later on, if there's ever a challenge, we can stand tall, making sure that all the T's were crossed and all the I's were dotted, because our effort is protecting the house. All right, let's get to the next one. So the next one I have is interpersonal skills. We kind of talked about this before, and conflict resolution. I think that's where we as correctional officers kind of excel because we're dealing with different personalities. We're dealing with extreme diversity. I mean, the unique thing about working in corrections, guys, is that technically, when you're a correctional officer, you can't escape engaging with individuals that you normally wouldn't engage with on the outside. I mean, in some cases, these are people you would mostly avoid. And now we're telling you got to go right in there and engage. And I think that really ups your game when it comes to interpersonal skills. I think it actually helped me just become better at managing everything, even for my children. And I think also for people that work in law enforcement outside of corrections, I think they should start in corrections first for about a year or two. I think that when you start in corrections first, kind of humbles you a little bit, to, kind of work a little bit more through communication as opposed to going for whatever's available on your tool belt the moment something gets a little bit chaotic. What's your thoughts on that, Russ?
yeah. This is the spot where we're generally really able to shine because we do have to go right in there, and I can't think of too many days where most of what I was doing wasn't about talking or telling or informing or ordering or yeah, sometimes even threatening. um, you have to be able to wear a lot of different hats, and you have to be able to say a lot of different things, and you have to be able to take on a real mantle of authority from the get-go, and it will hone you very fast, and it will put you in a position that you better be able to think things through, and you better be able to think them through from the beginning to the end before you even start at the beginning, because otherwise you'll put yourself in a position of disadvantage, and you'll have to start all the way back over with in whatever you're doing. And I see that so much. And it doesn't matter whether it's corrections or any other field, but this will in many ways sharpen you. It will hopefully, and I know not everyone turns out this way, it will hopefully give you the gift of gab and be able to talk your way through, from that point A to point B to point Z or whatever. But it will make you a better communicator. Now, whether you're going to excel at it or not, that's another question.
Yeah, and guys, let me see. I want to get to this other one real quick. Career growth. No, not that one. Career growth and expertise. Guys, I can tell you something right now. Working in corrections, a lot of people may not realize the opportunities you have that makes this a career. A lot of people may come in thinking it's a stepping stone, and therefore they really don't put full effort into wanting to learn what the job's about, because they just want to cross into something else later on, and they're just kind of going through the motions. And this whole time turns out to be a blur. I've always saw this as a true career. To me, it wasn't a stepping stone. I treated this job as what it was. It was a place for me to grow and develop. And you get a lot of people that treat this as a stepping stone, and they wind up really not seeing this as a career. And then when they don't have the other job and they don't get it, then they kind of wasted their career here. So when I walked in, you look at corrections, there's so many opportunities for growth, whether you want to go up your chain or travel out to different departments or do lateral teams, like, the special operations teams, the internal affairs division, whatever route you want to go. Again, you're like in your own community. For me, I went up the supervisory rank, kind of resting on prison management now. But I know a lot of people that have crossed into the internal affairs division, a lot of people that work with central trans. I mean, they try to figure out what it is that works best, but it takes time. It's not like you're going to be able to go in there and within your first couple of days be able to discover that route and put yourself in it. No, it could take years, because at the end of the day, it's you got to do your due diligence by doing that grunt work. I know the gentleman here, Sabim, is kind of like, I know we got the schedule going on, and how quick do you get this or how quick do you get that? It's not going to be quick. I mean, in some cases it could be, but for the most part, it's not going to be. You're going to have to go through what everyone else has gone through, which is pretty much you got to wait, and then one day it's your turn. I mean, that's kind of how the system works. And if you go in, not saying he is, but just in general, but if you go in expecting anything to be easy in this in this profession, it's not. I would say that when it comes to time off, when it comes to the positions you may want to attain, I think you truly get it through perseverance, not giving up when you get your first no. It's like, okay, well, I wanted central trans. I didn't get it my first 2 years. Okay, try again next year. Try again next year. Try again next year. And then eventually you'll start to see through perseverance that the position does open up. But if you expect it immediately, then you may find out that it's not that easy unless you have connections. I mean, that's always going to be a problem. What's your thoughts on that, Russ? Career growth and expertise?
So I'll just tell you this, is that if you're focused on what you think you're going to be doing or what you want to be doing in a year or 2 year or 3 years from now, you're wrong. You should be focused on what you're doing today. Otherwise, you're going to miss all of the true lessons that you need along the way. And you're doing yourself a disservice. You're doing your department a disservice. You're doing the public a disservice. You're doing your fellow correctional personnel a disservice. You're doing the inmates a disservice, because what you need to know for that future job is going to be encapsulated in the lesson that you learned today. And so rather than have your mind, always on the horizon, always on the future, never your mind on where you are, what you're doing in this moment. I'm all about the Jedi, man. So you have to be able to take those lessons away, and those lessons are gonna include both failures and successes. So if you're not going to have a metric to use that against, you're not going to be prepared for that future job. You may get it, but you're gonna suck at it.
Yeah, and guys, the other one I have is, I got 2 more left, or 3 more. The human side of the job. I think a lot of people don't realize that. Think about what you're doing. Corrections is defined by the human element. I mean, everything we deal with is usually interactions with other human beings. And I think for a while, correctional officers may have felt separate from the process of rehabilitation, as if we're operating on 2 extremes: safety and security on one side, rehabilitation on the other. But as you move up, as I moved up in management, I actually see how the benefit is when it blends. I do. I see the benefit of, if I want to keep the house operational, I got to keep the scale, uh, even. And then at certain points, I get it could shift. At all times, safety and security is paramount, but it's never an excuse uh, not to keep the thing moving, not to keep rehabilitation going. So there are times where, yes, codes could happen, and then that defines where the facility is in the moment. Let's lock it down, safety and security. But when it's slower, then rehabilitation has to trump. Rehabilitation has to keep it moving, because technically, a lot of us may want to go back to the lockdown process, and that's the way it could be the safest. But you're not really doing anything for the future and preparing these inmates for release. So as I started to move up, I realized that the house doesn't run on extremes. It's not an either or. It's like, I used to ask questions on the channel a while back when I was growing in the profession: safety, security versus rehabilitation. And as you grow, you realize it's not one or the other, but rather both in partnership to go ahead and succeed. And I think that's the human side of the job, because as that is mentioned in whatever the vision is, or if you want to carry out the mission, that's got to be seen in the behaviors that's out on the floor. That means I want to see my officers, and I want to see my service providers. I want to see them interacting. I want to see them working together. I want to see them all in line, so the inmates know there's no divide. I mean, that's another benefit, when we're all working together. And I think that is the human side of the job, because I have seen officers, clapping their hands when inmates are going through programs and graduating just as much as the service providers are. And I've seen service providers come and thank the correctional officers, because they know somewhere along the line, this officer was a great assistance in either getting the inmates to the program, motivating inmates to be at the program, where I'm feeling safe because the officer's here, so I can do the best when I'm teaching the program. So I think that this part of the job right here gets overlooked when you go back to that primitive notion of we're just guards. No, we're active in our community. Like when I think of a police officer, the word officer, I think of people that are active in their community. I do. I've always done, because I've always seen police officers active in their community. When I see the word guard, I don't see that. So now if I see correctional officer, I see people that are more engaged in their community, more engaged in making sure that the house is successful and not just one component of the house. What's your thoughts, Russ?
So, one of the things about, being in this profession is we do have to be very guarded about ourselves, right? I think, we just did a video on this the other day, is there's a set of, universal precautions that we have to take with regards to the way that we interact with inmates, right? Having said that, there's also a time for empathy and compassion, and being able to, do things that facilitate them, within the confines of the sentence that they're carrying out. There's a time and place in this profession to be hard and tough as nails with these guys. There really is. And there's going to be times where you're just going to have to trip into that mindset, and you're just going to have to, be an absolute, thorn in their side, or just an absolute asshole. I don't know a better way to put it, right? But that's just being a one-trick pony. If that's the only thing that you've got to go to every day, you are not communicating well. If that's the only go-to that you've got, there is a time and place to let that drift back, and to be able to, help them out with something. And so we have to be able to understand when and where those times are. I can't just wear that one hat all the time, where my go-to thing is to, kick rocks, or do worse, because, sometimes the only way to deal with an inmate is to use force. But you can't be, like I said, you can't be a one-trick pony. You have to be well developed, and you have to go in and you have to customize your approach as much as is possible within the confines of policy, procedure, law, and everything, to each individual, incident or event that you come across. And so that is the way that you want to be. I don't know, any other way to say it, but some people, all they know how to do is be that one trick pony. All they know how to do is start fires. All they know how to do is to make a situation worse, and they don't understand that, there's a time and season for everything. And so to be well-rounded, you have to be able to do it all. And that's where a lot of people really lose it in professions, is they're unable to find a way to be able to do it all.
Yeah, and I got one more. I got rid of a few other ones because we're kind of pushing over an hour and a half, but I wanted to add one more. And this is the realities versus media portrayal. I don't want to leave that. I mean, we kind of touched on it a little bit, but I wanted to make sure we cover this, guys. So this is always a hot topic for us because criminal justice system is always the center of political agenda because it involves so many lives. So people are always trying to sit on an extreme of whether you want to be hard or whether you want to be soft, as opposed to really seeing things the way it should be, which is how we operate every day, somewhere in the middle. But with that said, the way we're portrayed in the media is an unfair bias. It really is. I mean, and I know it, Russ know it, because we work behind the wall. We see what gets accomplished every day. And then we see that work get bastardized as it gets filtered through a political agenda that's meant to destroy the criminal justice system, which, to be honest with you, is unfair. Recently, we did some stuff on the Delphi murders, Richard Allen, and you get a guy that probably, in my mind, is playing the system, whether you agree with it or not. Me and Russ worked in corrections long enough to know that inmates will do some crazy things to get out of a life sentence, including eating their own feces. But with that said, when you have the attack on the system, and now you got a guy that made 61 confessions, and someone comes around and says, well, let's put solitary confinement, because even if you don't agree with Richard Allen being innocent, let's attack the system. And then we'll get people who will agree that that could happen. But then it's like, well, why don't we bring the jury to go see what it's like? And you'll see there's no such thing as solitary confinement, because that whole case is a conflict. He's left alone, but he can call his family 700 times. He's seen by mental health, but he's left alone. It's just so the media will portray whatever they could portray to bastardize the work that's being done behind the wall. And one of the big things that we mentioned earlier today is not only do they outright bastardize it, but they keep us in primitive roles. The last thing they want to show you is a system that works. And when I say work, I mean work on every avenue. Every avenue in an effort to bring rehabilitation and safety and security together. Now, I want to mention one other thing too, is that when people start to announce changes that are happening in the system, changes that are meant to bring balance, like rehabilitation with safety and security, the funny thing is we've been doing that for years. People just decide, I'm going to put my name on that, and this is what I've done. It's like, no, you haven't done that. We've been doing that. But I guess we got to put your name on it because, that's what you want, and you're in political position. But, it's like, oh, same thing with PREA. Yeah, you got to make sure that, inmates are not being raped, and I'm going to make this into law. What do you think we do in corrections all day? You think we allow people to rape each other? No, if we see that, we jump in, we get involved, and we protect the victim. But we didn't need granted, it's good to have the laws on it. I'm not saying it's not needed, but to take credit for it as if that's something that we've never done and now we have to do, I think that's unfair. I think that's what keeps people's mind primitive. And what we do is that they create a law that is so common sense to us because we've been doing it every day, but they make it look like it's being done for the first time and they put their name on it. And it's like, nah, we've been doing that every day. But unfortunately, I guess someone wants to put their name on it, but what they don't tell you is the fact that we've been doing it every day. So they get their chance to be the pioneer over practices that we have done for the last 40 and 50 years. And Russ, you agree with that, Russ? I'm sure you've seen that.
Yeah. that's the thing is that there's, first of all, we have a group of individuals, which are inmates, which I think we can all agree are not optimal individuals. So we expect, though, what? We expect optimal outcomes. Yeah, we should be able to rehabilitate each and every single one of them, correct? It's not the way it works, people. It's just that's not going to happen. We have there's only a limited number of things that you can do to make it successful. All right. So then, and I think that's I think that's a great example. They come up with PREA and they say, hey, this is gonna, really stop this happening in prisons. I'm like, is it? Is it really? And then a lot of people, really don't even understand PREA because, it's like PREA, how many crimes were defined and created by PREA, and people, I don't know, 2, 3, 5, whatever it is. No, zero. It was zero. There are no crimes within PREA. PREA is a guideline, the federal laws about how state prisons and jails and everything else across the country have to run things. It's a reach for power, is what it is in my interpretation and the way I think about it. But they didn't create any new crimes out of it. So what did it really do? It just tried to shift responsibility and claim a victory lap for a president. So probably someone will be angry with me on that, but we just have to, look at this and just know that there's only so much that we're going to be able to, wrangle out of everything we do. The best thing that we do, I think, and my belief is not what we do for the inmates, but what we do largely and primarily for the criminal justice system and for the public by keeping people safe. And is it optimal? I don't think that there's any way that we can really have to judge that. Should we try new things? Yeah, we should try new things. We should be trying all the time. Are we going to get saddled with political bullshit? Yes, we are. But most of all, I can just say I want each and every person, that wears the badge in corrections, or even if you're not wearing a badge in corrections. I want you to thrive. I want you to prosper. I want you to be safe. I want you to enjoy your job, and I want you to be happy that you joined. And that's a choice that you make. I see a lot of Debbie Downers who they're just glad that they're unhappy about their job, and so don't make that choice. Make that choice to be happy in your job. And like I say, it's not going to be diamonds every day. Some of it's going to be stones, but there'll be a few diamonds along the way.
And guys, I tell you something, I've been involved with the media. I've been on national news multiple times. I'm working with a company now. It's tough because when you're behind the scenes, you kind of get to see how things work or how things must work. And there are good people that unfortunately get caught up with this political agenda. But with that said, there is a balance. And I think that what they need to do, and I think that some of them are trying to do it now, is to bring people with experience into the profession or into the mainstream. And then basically have those people talk from experiences. I go to colleges all the time and talk to the students, and they're very informed about political stuff, especially with the criminal justice system, but they don't really have a lot of information about the operations of a prison and what we're really doing. So sometimes when they ask a question and I receive it, I got to remember their kids, and they may not know about the system itself, but sometimes the questions, and they don't realize it, can come off as very insulting because I've worked in the profession, and they don't even realize that there's a bias in the way they're asking it. And my problem is if that when they do graduate and they go in these higher positions, that bias now will be implemented because I think right now what's going on with the system right now is that people are asking the wrong questions. they're asking questions that feed into whatever it is that they're trying to accomplish through whatever that political agenda, where people from experience will ask the objective questions. We'll make sure that we put measures in play that count when it comes to, putting good intent into a world like ours. Where's the other side of it all? Like, okay, we want to protect the boy that cries wolf, but what are we doing to deter the wolf? Because a lot of the policies that are being put in play are great. I get why they're needed to some extent, but they don't have the caveat. They don't have what happens if it gets misused, and where's the accountability of that aspect. And it's like, because when they put the picture out there, they put it one-sided. And it's very one-sided. And the moment you want to hold somebody responsible for abusing it, well, that's not what we wanted to do. Why? Because at the end, there's still accountability. It's like you put something in play to limit accountability, and then now it's like, okay, well, now it's being misused, and we got accountability on this end. Someone asked, applying for the CDCR next week with fitness exams. Any advice on getting the job? Anything for them, Russ?
So, prep and know exactly what you're going to be doing. I can tell you that with CDCR, I don't know. Did you see okay, so the fitness part of it, not the health part of it, but the physical fitness part, man, start training, right? I don't know exactly what they do now. It used to be that, it was just, cycling a little bit, and then I think they did like a grip strength and a few little things like that. What you go through at the academy is going to be a lot more significant than that. As far as the rest of it, I think that CDCR at the beginning uses a written test. I believe it's the one that they call Pellet B, if I'm not mistaken. And Pellet B, it's just, it's like basic writing and reading comprehension and a little bit of math, nothing too crazy. And so you want to make sure you score well on that. Then there's also an oral part. I don't know the order that all these go in now. But they're going to give you some scenarios, and they're real basic things that just have you like using your thinking process. How would I do this? And they don't expect you to know all the rules and regulations. But it's still a chance for you to showcase your abilities, right? To be able to communicate, where you can say, hey, I'm not exactly sure what I would do there, but I would assume that you would, stop all movement and make sure you make a transmission on your radio or sound the alarm and lock things down, and just take them through the process, and then at the end of it, you put a little hook in there for them to get you say. And after something like that, I would always make sure that I talk to my supervisor and make sure that I did some kind of after action review, so that I would handle it better next time if I was, there was a deficit of some sort. And because that's what they want to hear, is they want to hear how you adjust and learn and adapt and overcome. And that's your one chance is if you give the base minimum on things, they're going to mark you down. They want you engaged in the process. They want to see how you've prepared, And what was it? Was there any other part of that?
No, that was it. That was just the part for, and then he said something about doing an online course.
The online test. I don't know if I don't know if that's a preparatory test or not, but I believe that that's part of the Pellet B, where they give you some examples. I think that they still proctor that test. I could be wrong, so I don't know if that was part of the official part of it or not that he was talking about there.
All right, and then Spen asked, he goes, Anthony, I can't find your books in the description. I'll try to Google it. Okay, so real quick, so hold on, Russ, let me show him something real quick.
Okay.
So these two books you can find on Amazon: Inmate Manipulation Decoded and Breaking Boundaries. These are based on manipulation. This is more focused on undue familiarity, and this is more focused on the tactical games. So these are self-published, but they're good. They're doing what they're supposed to do. I would say this book is the most popular one. This book is thousands upon thousands sold and is used in training all across the country. But this book is also a good support book for it. So if you're ever in training and you're looking to train, I would partner these books. I also have books that are published through a main publisher, which is Blue 360 Media. So if you go to blue360media.com and you search Anthony Gandry, you're going to see 5 books. One is Managing Inmate Behavior. So this is basically kind of speeding the process. So it takes a while for a rookie officer to become senior. And what I mean by that is I think there's a transition that goes from reactionary mode as a rookie, where you're writing up every rule and every rule violation and whatnot. And then you kind of lead by expectation. And unfortunately, we're losing a lot of senior staff, and there's a lot of rookies coming in that are working in these RHU units where basically it's not about rule enforcement to some level. Like when you're at those regular housing, those GP housing units, and inmates have stuff they can lose, well, then that you could take stuff away. And that's what we train our officers on at the very beginning of their career, 0 tolerance, and set that template. But when you're going into the RHU, that's a different dynamic. They don't really have much to lose. So it's ran by discretion, sort of, and the power of giving things back to some extent. It's the lost first gain. And that's what this book covers. It's a very short little book, but it covers a lot, including how to identify what type of inmate you're dealing with, and then how to approach it. But it really focuses on the lost first gain system. And I needed to write that. And I wrote that within 5 days because we're losing experienced officers. So we got rookies going in, and the inmates are playing them a little bit. So I wanted to write something that's a little bit more balanced. This one sells a lot. This is How to Succeed in Corrections, Lessons Learned While Working in a Prison. These are basically just thoughts that, came to me throughout my career that I would kind of journal down. So it's a collection of passages. But I also have quotes submitted from other professionals in the field that relate to each passage, which strengthens what's in this book. So there's so many different areas that's covered in this book, everything from management to frontline. It's a very healthy book. I would recommend all these books, but this is a great book if you're career oriented, but it covers a lot. Then I also have tips for new correctional officers and their supervisors. A lot of the quotes in here are there's a lot, but I think Russ has a lot of quotes in most of these books. But this book carries everything from the tactical side of, entering this profession to if you're a supervisor, working with your rookies. And this covers a lot. I mean, we have a lot of tactical advice here, how to do searches. I did a whole video on that. That's actually used in some training right now. But guys, how safety and security. I mean, guys, you want to hear something funny? These are lessons that you've learned after doing 20-something years in the profession. So now you have to go back and try to find a way to filter those lessons so a rookie can understand it. Because sometimes you may say, well, I wish I knew now. I wish I knew then what I knew now. Yeah, but maybe it's not that good because maybe, you weren't ready for the stuff that you learned, that this is a lessons that you've evolved into. So what I did here was I basically tried to work in a manner where what I've learned in 22 years could be translated down to the rookies. And the reason why I put on their supervisors is because when this book is given to a rookie, I want someone next to them that can translate some of the lessons here. And they're not simple lessons. Then I have 2 more. Unlocking Your Leadership Potential. This is a book that I really want to have for my leaders. Same thing, passage driven, got little lines on the bottom that you can write your own thoughts in. And I think what makes this book a gift is that after you completed your journey, let's say you're leaving corrections and you kind of read the passage and you add your notes, you can always pass this book off to the person who you may feel could be that leader, So, and this is Unlocking Leadership Potential, Insight for Correctional Professionals. And I mean, guys, there's everything. Create buy-in during decision-making process, doing the job that's needed, not the job that's wanted. Focusing on outcome can cause jealousy, dealing with difficult people as a leader. And then I got quotes from so many different people in the profession to reinforce. And now this book is a good book. This is, I love what 360 did with this book, but this is effective report writing for correction professionals. And guys, this book is a little bit pricey. The books that are published are going to cost more than the self-published books. So this book right here is probably, I think, $70 or $80. But there's so much advice in here. And I'm just so happy what they did with this book. I can't explain it, but me and Russ were having a discussion. We were actually going to do something today, but I'll have it set for maybe tomorrow on report writing, when to document, when not to document. And I actually have a whole section in here on everything we talked about, when to watch the video before this and when not to. I mean, I can't explain how much this book covers. And maybe tomorrow morning, if Russ is available, we could do the show that you want to do about report writing, because you're off tomorrow, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, if you want to get up tomorrow and hit me up, we could do that. We'll do that as a record and post it up there. But Russ had an idea to do a video. I already have the banners in play, but it's basically to document or not to document. And I think it's going to be a good dialogue.
And this one was someone was bringing up that one of their supervisors was not reporting reportable incidents, and so one of the things that we had outlined in California Department of Corrections is we knew what we had to report. We knew that we had to do an incident package when we had a felony, right? We had to do an incident package, when we had a use of force. We had an incident package when somebody dies, when there's significant property damage, when there's, and a whole list of things. And so, if you have supervisors that are shortcutting this stuff, especially if it's very clear in your, policy and procedures, this is not where you want to miss the boat on that at all.
Yeah, Eric just had a joke. He goes, which book would probably make for the best weapon? I said, How to Succeed in Corrections. You know what I've been doing, guys, to be honest with you, too? I've been looking at some of the videos that we've done in the past and taking the transcript and then putting it through AI to make passages based on the knowledge. So I'm thinking maybe one day to develop a book of passages based on almost the 1,700 episodes we have. Maybe when I retire, that's what I'll do, because it's AI could just take all your transcript and it can make it into a whole article. And, there's a lot of knowledge here. Like, God forbid YouTube ever shuts us down. It'd be good to, create something. I know me and Russ maybe going to Orlando in May to speak at the gang conference, I believe. And then I think I have to go to South Carolina. So we're going to be doing a little bit more conferences next year. So hopefully I'll see you guys out there. He goes, hey, great information. I'll start with inmate manipulation code. I'm sure that will help me being green. Yeah, it will. And I would definitely recommend also buy Breaking Boundaries. That book's, I'm telling you, it's a sleeper book, but it's a good book because it complements the process.
Let me just say something about inmate manipulation decoded. That's a foundational book. I see all the time. I mean, there's other good books out there, but there hasn't been one like that that's come along in quite a while. There were games criminals play. There was another one now that I can't think of off the top of my head. They're kind of Art of the Con, and they're a little bit antiquated. They're a little bit anachronistic. So really, that one was necessary to come along at this time. And I think that it's it's an overall better book, especially for those people that are just getting into the academy. And it is a book that will keep you much more professionally safe, no doubt. You have to learn what these games are about, and they're so insidious and pernicious that someone hopefully your academy or someone that you're with at your jail or prison. I forget what department he said he's getting into there. Will is he the one that's going to Rikers? Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that they will probably pull you aside and let you know what's up. Almost certainly. But being able to, read it in a form, where you're away from the institution and being able to digest it and then come back and look and see it and compare things that are happening in real time to you, will be invaluable. I wish that, I wish I'd had more things like that, come along my way when I was first getting into this, because you can't prepare enough for this particular job. You just can't. So you're in good hands having these things as an addendum to the other things that are going to be going on.
Thank you, Rush. What's funny is when I got these books, I have all 7 of them, and sometimes I think I've covered so many areas that if someone has something, I could kind of say, hey, check this out on this page. I'll send them a picture of the page. And I think if I had to teach something on the moment, inmate manipulation decoded is something I could pick up and teach like this, even if I didn't have the PowerPoint, because I lived those experiences through that book. I mean, I pretty much jotted what I was feeling, what I was going through. So that book was created based on my own vulnerability, knowing that I could be manipulated. And then I think me and Russ, years later, that was written in 2020. I think I wanted to write something on the undue familiarity process, because a lot of us may not realize what's creeping on us. So I thought that book was a great book, kind of like a prequel to Inmate Manipulation Decoded. But I will tell you one thing, even if you look at these other books that have the passages, I can remember for every passage, I could remember exactly what moment I developed or thought about that passage, because I journaled my career. I journaled. So if I had a concern that I had to sit on, management manipulation decoded, next book, yeah, Eric, I would sit on it and I would go ahead and then write it, because it was my way to vent. And but the one book, to be honest with you, I think that should be as powerful as Inmate Manipulation Decoded, because as I said, Inmate Manipulation Decoded is it's my biggest seller. And I think Breaking Boundaries will remember, Manipulation Decoded came out, but it didn't sell right away. I mean, outside of my initial audience, it was more of word of mouth, whatever it is. So now it sells I don't know, thousands of copies yearly right now. Breaking Boundaries is starting to pick up the momentum. But this little book right here, and Russ got a chance to see this book, Manage Inmate Behavior. This is the book right now that is needed the most. And this is a book, guys. I'm telling you something right now. This is the book that's going to save a lot of people, a lot of rookies. It's going to give them a way to manage what's in front of them. But it's a small book, but people don't know what they don't know. But I'm telling you, for the people that have read this book, this book, I wrote this book very emotional, because I was pissed off at what was going on. And I said, you know what, if people think that the rules cover everything when you're working in these close custody settings, the inmates are going to run these guys, run these officers like never before. I said that right now you have entitled inmates versus disenfranchised officers. And the conflict I had, what made me want to create that book, was that when rookies are in the academy, you're training them to kind of sweat everything, write the rules, because their confidence is going to come from rule enforcement, because they have to, the policies and the procedures are what they'll lean on. And then it takes some time, but eventually they develop discretion. And that discretion is the other half of the loss first gain system. So basically you manage inmate behavior through loss, but then once they're putting in those restorative housing units or whatnot, the manager of their behavior comes on how you give things back. So you're not really so charge heavy. So there's I kind of hinted it in my other books before, but there's a transition from a rookie to a senior officer that really goes from a rookie being reactionary, chasing the rules and writing inmates up, to transition into expectation, where they're able to sit back, hypothetically, hear me out, and the inmates know what to expect from the officer knows what to expect from the inmate, and then basically it's just this perfect transition. And then I said, now when you got these rookies coming in and you think they're training right from the get-go, if I don't have good senior officers that they can get like a role model from, the problem is that transition's being lost. So I said, well, how do you speed up the transition? I mean, is there a way to speed it up? And that book was pretty much written in an effort to speed up the process and pretty much tell you, what you're going to learn in the course of 22 years, pretty much by reading this book. And it covers a lot, from identifying inmates from whether I put them as annoying, being a threat, or annoying, disruptive threat, basically how you deal with them, the manipulation of the system, and a little story in the process. But that book, that's a book that I would probably walk with me the most right now. That's a book that I feel is very relevant right now, and I just wish if it could just get into that right hand. People will see why that. Because Russ, I read part of that book to you.
Yeah, and the thing that I'll say about that book is that what we want to do in corrections is we want to shortcut officers from the old style processes, the bullshit sink or swim, and everything else that used to go on. And we want to take them, from the apprentice stage to the journeyman stage as fast as possible, right? And books like that and interactions like this will do that. It will shorten the time. The more that we're able to shorten the time, the better off everyone at any given institution will be. Because when we progress to that stage and we get people, at the journeyman stage as fast as possible, then they can really start to begin the transition where they go from that journeyman to the master, and that's when we start getting people who are hopefully going to be the kind that are going to progress to that next stage, which is, moving up and promoting, beyond the badge and the uniform, into, administration and upper management. And hopefully the people that are going to be able to, eventually look at politicians and go, no, that's not a good idea, and and be able to rein some of this bullshit that we see back in, hopefully.
We got a good comment from Josh. Let me just read it real quick. Josh James, thank you for my acceptance into Keepers of Chaos, Sergeant Hamilton. Much gratitude, Russ and G, for all the wisdom you have thrown out the world free of charge. Both of your experiences helping my first steps into the world of corrections. Corrections be strides with confidence. Oh, I got you. And cannot thank you guys enough. I'm going to tell you something. Russ said it perfectly. If I could just reiterate, the apprentice to journeyman or to true professional. I mean, that's when you're losing out on the role models, when you're losing out on the senior staff. Remember when I first started Tier Talk about 12 years ago, it was really just meant to paint a picture and let the outside know we're more than what they may think. And then eventually I realized that we didn't think so highly of ourselves. So I said, well, it doesn't make sense to start from the outward in. It makes better sense if I start from the inward out. And then the focus was to shift on us and our belief, which turned into training and a bunch of other things. And as time progressed, there's always areas that are hotter than others. And, manipulation was a big thing for a while because I thought people weren't taking it seriously. Russ had complacency, which is a big thing because, due to routine, efficiency could get eroded. And then supervisory was a big thing because as I moved up in my career, I thought, let me document my journey through videos or whatnot and try that. But now, and it's been this way for a bit, is we're losing senior staff, we're losing core values. And now it's doing whatever we can, whether it's through video or through books, to remind people of the stuff that's worked. Because what's happening now, and this is the scary thing, is I've entered corrections at a point where it was early 2000s, 2002, and I saw a very effective corrections. It wasn't, I know people compare it to when it was locked down. No, let's compare it to where it needs to be. We know that it has to have a balance of rehabilitation and safety and security. So I saw a very effective process in that. And then I saw changes that eroded. But now the people that are coming in, their foundation is different. Their foundation is not where we were at that zenith, but rather where we are now. And to them, they think that is the zenith. And now I have a feeling if you don't remind people of where we were, to let them know that you may be thinking that you're on the top floor, but you're still in the basement. Like where you need this, because we got people right now in corrections that really think they're at their A game, but they don't know what they don't know. And the supervisors are getting younger, because the officers are technically getting younger. They have lesser time in. And what I mean by younger is younger in age, yes, but more so younger in their professional journey. I mean, people are moving up quicker than ever did before, because 2 years could be, holy shit, that person's senior now. Where I remember for me, 5, 10 years was when you start looking at something. And the problem is now they're bringing up, into these leadership positions what they only know. And it's not their fault, because if you don't know something, how do you know to look for it? So I think my avenues here are just to, hey, I know you don't have that role model next to you anymore because I know they've left, but here's a book, here's a video, picture us with you, or whatever you got to do, so we can make sure that for the next generations that are coming in, that we don't lose out on the core values that have made us truly successful, especially what Russ said, especially with inmate management. Inmate management has become, this is just not a shot at anybody, just the way it is, very soft, very, very soft. And the sad thing is, that needs to be recognized. We cannot continue to go in that direction and keep a safe running facility. And I think some of these books here are just quick reminders of the wolf that we're dealing with, that I think we're forgetting about. Would you agree with that, Russ?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is always, always at the center of all of corrections is going to be the inmate. And we had better recognize that we have to have ways to deal with significant security threats every time, all the time, each day, every day. And too many people get in there and they just want to they always want to push the softer things. And if you can't hold someone accountable, and if you can't provide for safety, you can't rehabilitate anybody under those conditions. And that's why we've got to understand that the rehabilitation, how do I put this? The rehabilitation and accountability should go hand in hand, not some bullshit idea about rehabilitation is kindness and kindness is weakness, and so weakness is the best thing that we can do for these inmates, because it's not. Kindness is not doing them any service at all. Kindness just promulgates their ability later on to have a higher victim count. And that's just the truth of the matter. And people think that a lack of conflict and giving in to the things that they want, and actually trying to help them. What's the word? I can't think of it right now. Being not a co-conspirator, but enabling them, being an enabler to them is not helping society. It's not helping them. It's not helping anybody. And yet that's where we are. The paradigm that we see today is just let everything go by. And then they'll tell you, except for violent crimes. And then when you see the list of alleged nonviolent crimes here in California, you would be shocked. But we have some sanity coming back. We just passed Proposition 36, which is going to take and all of the old, well, a lot of the old crimes that they made misdemeanors are going to be made into felonies again. um, the voters here soundly and resoundingly rejected Proposition 6, which was basically a way to give inmates a hammock and just let them do whatever they want, and they don't have to work. And if they do work, they get paid minimum wage. So they wanted to do that so that no inmate ever had to atone, for anything they did. They never had to pay back society. They never had to pull their own weight, and they were deprived of the opportunity to actually engage in meaningful rehabilitation. And so, when I see these things, I don't understand the mindset of, I don't understand the mindset of our politicians and our alleged leaders with regard to this. There is so much more that you can actually do for inmates by making them toe the line, by holding their feet to the fire, by making them and requiring them to do certain things than to just, shrug it all off.
What's funny, guys.
I'll get off my high horse now.
No. It's funny. As we start to wrap up, I wanted to mention something. When I get ready to retire, the reason why I envy Russ right now is I don't know what the end game is going to be for me when I retire in about 2 years and change. I think like a lot of stuff I do is truly driven by what I'm dealing with in the moment. Russ will know because I usually call Russ after work to vent to him. So whether I'm creating a video or whether I'm writing a book, it's usually created in something I dealt with in the moment, and then how I feel about it. And then the other thing is I need to be able to apply. I need to be able to apply it. So I'm hoping that when I retire, maybe there's conferences or maybe there's I got the TV thing. Hopefully that works out well. That will definitely keep me more engaged. But if there's no chance for me to apply it, I don't know. If I got all this stuff here, all this leadership book, everything I've ever read, and I know the knowledge got to be somewhere. But the reason why I did a lot of the writing is I think it's not something I could write when I'm not in the profession anymore because I won't be that passionate to complete it. I even maybe sometimes even with the videos because I'm just not living it. So I felt that, write it now, don't wait. And, see what happens when you retire. I don't know if I'm going to be like Russ or Joe, where I'm going to look back and, want to still provide, or I don't know if it's going to be, hey, I did it. I'm done. I did my part. I left the legacy behind. I don't know where I'm going to be at that point. I'm hoping, as I said, the TV stuff works out, which I'm working on now. I bought some cameras and stuff right now too for another side gig. I want to start getting into interviews, going to people's houses or going to whatever. But I got to see, I don't know if this is, I love what I do. I love doing it, but I've created over 1,700 videos. I got the books. It's draining. But if the conferences, because I think once I retire, I now have to, do stuff that's lucrative. So I think when I retire, maybe doing the conferences more. But I'm curious to see I want to see if I could be like Russ or Joe and still have dialogue. Because my thing is, if I can't apply it, I don't know. How many years are you in G? Over 22. So I have about 2.5 years left. I can retire probably at the end of 2027 about 22 and a half. I could probably retire at the end of 2027. But I'll push it a couple more months. But I'm not doing more than 25. Most likely, I'll still be doing Tier Talk when I retire. But I want to be like. I just hope I'm. I think at that point it'll be a mission.
Hey, I just got to say, hey, I'm on the very cusp of losing all of my power.
Oh well, we can wrap up. Russ, anything in closing?
Man, I love you guys out there. You guys on the front line. Always going to be here for you. And, this is a great profession. Make the best of it that you can.
All right, Russ. And thanks for being on. Maybe we'll do a show tomorrow about the report writing.
Sounds good.
All right, Russ. Take care, brother.
All right.
All right, guys, that's for my closing. He's going to go out. So, yes, tomorrow me and Russ will do a show. I'll just touch on to document or not to document. I think it'll be a good episode. We were talking about that earlier today, but then I wanted to do this, and then we wanted to go live. So we made some adjustments. But look at this, guys. I bought some Mevo cameras. Take a look. I bought 3 of them. It's these things. They're pretty cool. I got 3 of them. What's cool about these cameras, I got 3. There's the other one over there. Is when you're recording, you go on your it goes onto your iPad, and you can create the angles that you need. So let's say I was doing an interview, so I have one. Let's say one on me and I guess the whole area, and then I'll have one on my guests and one on me specifically, and then you could switch the angles when you're recording it, and then it goes right into your iPad already edited. And then the sound too, you don't have to do anything. Like I bought these external mics. They're wireless. So they're pretty good. Now, guys, I'm not a pro at any of this, but it speeds up the process, and these things shoot at 1080p. So it just saves me a lot on the back end. So I was thinking about maybe, doing some, I used to do a lot of interviews by going on site. So maybe I'll get back into doing that, and, saves a lot of work from editing on the back end. So I think that'd be pretty cool. As always, guys, so I'll post this. Well, this video is live. It'll go up already, but tomorrow we'll post the, unless you guys have another question, tomorrow we'll post the video on report writing. I have off tomorrow, so me and Russ will do it early in the morning. As always, guys, stay safe. It's 1:27 by me, and I'll post up another video tomorrow.